Welcome. NTD Good Morning starts now. Here are today's top stories. A powerful coastal storm is set to slam the southeast this weekend, bringing heavy snow, strong winds, and coastal flooding. Residents are urged to prepare now. The Trump administration acts on multiple fronts: China, Cuba, Canada, and Venezuela. And President Trump issues a warning to the UK over China ties. On Capitol Hill, an overnight vote failed to gain steam. The delay means a partial government shutdown is expected to kick in at midnight tonight. The details on what caused the last-minute impasse. President Trump unveils a new federal plan to tackle addiction. The details on the Great American Recovery Initiative. NTD's 5th International Photography Competition has come to a conclusion. Winners share their thoughts on the contest and reveal what inspired their photos.
This is NTD Good Morning, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here are Stephanie Cox and Carrie Dunst.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us, Kevin Hogan, and for Steph and Carrie. Today is Friday, January 30th. This is NTD Good Morning and today's top news. Breaking this morning, President Trump announced that he's nominating former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh to be the next Federal Reserve Chair. In a Truth Social post, Trump said he is confident that Warsh will be a great Fed chairman with his extensive background and experience. Kevin Warsh is a former Federal Reserve governor who served from 2006 to 2011 and represented the Fed at the G20. He is currently a visiting fellow at Stanford's Hoover Institution and a partner at Dostoevsky Family Office, run by the famed investor Stanley Druckenmiller. Warsh previously worked as a White House economic advisor and held senior roles at Morgan Stanley. Warsh would replace current Chair Jerome Powell when his term expires in May. The appointment requires Senate confirmation. Trump has been criticizing current Chair Jerome Powell for keeping interest rates too high. The president says rates should be 2 to 3 percentage points lower, arguing the U.S. is paying too much to borrow. And in a second Truth Social post this morning, the president praised White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett, one of the names floated as a potential Fed chair pick. Trump called Hassett's work outstanding, saying he's doing such a great job that he wants to keep him right where he is. Now, partial government shutdown is likely to kick in by midnight tonight. The expected second shutdown comes after senators failed to pass a package of funding bills, even after President Trump worked out a last-minute deal with Democrats to address their concerns over ICE. NTD's Melania reports.
On Capitol Hill, an overnight vote to avert a partial government shutdown failed to gain steam. It appears that Republican Senator Lindsey Graham emerged as the main obstacle. He protested the vote to try to force the Senate to approve a provision to allow senators to sue the DOJ if their phone records were illegally obtained. It's an issue Graham has been pushing to address for months.
If they can do this to the United States Senator, what could they do to you? Maybe somebody in the Department of Justice doesn't like your post, doesn't like your political activity, and they want to shut you down. They want to find out who you've been talking to. This is scary stuff.
The issue was addressed in the last government funding bill, but House lawmakers repealed it this time. This week's fast-tracked process to avert a shutdown means any one senator can stall passage. Senate Democrat leader Chuck Schumer criticized Republicans for the holdup, though Senate leader John Thune said there were snags on both sides of the aisle. The overnight delay comes after the White House worked to make a last-minute deal with Democrats to address ICE policies and practices.
Well, I've had a very good relationship over the last couple of days with Senator Schumer. We've gotten along very well. We're working on trying to get it to stay open, and we'll see what happens. It's in the process.
President Trump on Thursday announced a deal with Democrats to temporarily extend DHS funding for 2 weeks. The goal, to allow more room for negotiations on how to change ICE policy.
But bottom line, there should be no more funding for DHS without fundamental far-reaching reforms that involve firing the top management, imposing liability on agents that break the law, as well as body cameras, judicial warrants, self-identification, an end to the sweeps.
We're being asked to jettison funding for a department that includes, among other things, the enforcement of our immigration laws and the enforcement of our borders, something that's been severely compromised in the last few years and that President Trump is working hard to overcome. We're being asked to jettison.
Senators will return today to try to work out the impasse. Even if the bill does pass the Senate today, a short shutdown is still likely. The new package also needs to be approved by the House.
I've got to make some tough decisions later this evening on how soon we can get House members back, if indeed they send us the package. I wish that they had voted upon or would vote upon the 12 bills that we passed through our regular order process in a bipartisan fashion. It was quite an achievement.
As of now, House members aren't scheduled to return until Monday. A short-term partial shutdown is highly likely. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem is responding to calls for her firing. She addressed criticism she's been facing since 2 fatal shootings by federal agents in Minneapolis, speaking to Fox News yesterday.
Well, these radicals are attacking me, but I'm just doing my job. I'm following the law, enforcing the laws like President Trump promised that he would do to keep people safe in this country. We're going to continue to go after these criminals.
Among those calling for her removal are House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and California Governor Gavin Newsom. 2 Republican senators, North Carolina's Thom Tillis and Alaska's Lisa Murkowski, have also called for her removal. President Trump has said he has no plans to fire Noem, telling reporters earlier this week she is doing a very good job. In her conversation on Fox yesterday, Noem also spoke about new videos that have emerged of Alex Pretty, the man shot by agents last week. The videos show Pretty 11 days before his death swearing at ICE agents and attacking their vehicle. Noem commented on Pretty saying, quote, "Clearly there's a history there of attacking our law enforcement officers and our CBP and ICE officers." Borders Art Tom Homan says Minnesota will now allow jails to notify ICE when an illegal immigrant is being released. Homan says if discussions keep going well with state leaders, then the amount of federal agents in the state could start decreasing. NTD correspondent Jason Blair has more.
When we have these agreements, it takes less law enforcement agents to do the job.
White House Borders Art Tom Homan says that Minnesota jails will now be allowed to notify ICE when criminal illegal immigrants are being released so that ICE can come to the jail to make an arrest. Homan says that Minnesota state prisons have already been complying with this.
More agents in the jail means less agents in the street.
Homan says that when ICE agents can't make an arrest at a jail, they have to go out in the street.
Now we got to arrest somebody on his turf who has access to who knows what weapons. Now we got to send the whole team out. Then because of the hateful rhetoric and the attacks on ICE officers, now we got to send a security team behind the arrest team. I know that causes stress in the community.
Some people have argued that when local police work with ICE, it could discourage illegal immigrants who are victims of crimes to come to local police for help. Homan addresses this issue and says that it's not a problem.
All we want is to talk to the person that local and state law enforcement authorities locked in a jail cell.
Following Homan's press conference, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz posts, "It's time for the federal government to draw down their forces and let us get back to allowing freedom, opportunity, and security for everyone." While speaking at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in Washington, D.C., Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey reiterated his intent to end the current ICE operation in his area called Operation Metro Surge.
Never in a million years did I think that we would be in this place. Where troops and federal agents by the thousands have been deployed on a great American city.
The White House has emphasized that states and cities that cooperate more with ICE are largely safer.
7 of the top 10 safest cities in the United States cooperate with ICE. And we've seen historic turnaround in safety in cities that have chosen to cooperate with ICE, that are not just led by Republicans, but also look right here in Washington, D.C.
Tom Homan was sent to Minnesota by President Trump on Monday to speak with state and local leaders amidst protests, social unrest, and tough working conditions for immigration authorities. Homan also made it clear that the administration is not backing down on its mission of immigration enforcement and that he'll stay in Minnesota until the problem is solved. Jason Blair, NTD News.
President Trump has launched a government-wide plan to tackle substance abuse and addiction. The president yesterday signed an executive order launching a federal strategy focused on prevention and support. Here's what that effort will involve.
Thank you very much.
At the Oval Office yesterday, President Trump signed an executive order launching what he called the Great American Recovery Initiative, a federal effort to combat addiction and substance abuse.
Now we're taking a bold action to help Americans struggling with all forms of addiction so they can get the help and the support that they need to free themselves from the horrible burden of dependency.
Trump said the initiative would coordinate a national response across government, healthcare, faith communities, and the private sector to treat addiction as a chronic medical condition instead of an isolated event. The plan prioritizes early intervention to stop dependency before it begins. This will be followed by continued support for those in long-term recovery. The White House says nearly 50 million Americans struggle with addiction. That's nearly 17% of the population. Trump has spoken openly about his brother Freddie's struggle with alcoholism. He said many Americans know the heartache of a loved one's taken by drug or alcohol addiction. The Great American Recovery Initiative will be co-chaired by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Kennedy called addiction one of the greatest challenges the country faces.
Addiction is not a moral failure, it is a disease. It's chronic, it's treatable, and for too long our nation has responded with fragmentation, with stigmatization, and silence instead of science, compassion, and coordination.
Alongside him will be Catherine Burgum, the wife of Interior Secretary Doug Burgum. She spoke yesterday of her own experience with alcoholism. She called addiction a lifelong, chronic, relapsing disease that needs to be treated like a disease.
And today I'm standing here in this incredibly beautiful Oval Office. And if not for the grace of God, I would not be alive today with over 23 years in recovery.
Also present at the Oval Office was Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. He spoke about how Trump encouraged him to speak about his son Andrew, who died of an opioid overdose.
I lost my son Andrew, and the president was an incredible friend when I lost him. I lived in his building at 502 Park Avenue. And I remember when him and the First Lady came, and I talked about this all the time. And so he took my hand, and he said to me, come on up to the stage and tell the world about your boy, Andrew. And of course, that was, something that was really meaningful to me, and I got through it.
Trump said official records show around 300,000 Americans die every year from drug and alcohol abuse, saying the real number is probably higher. But he said drug overdose deaths have dropped by 21% in the last year. He credited it partly to his administration's crackdown on drug cartels. Trump said since the start of his second term, authorities have seized over 47 million fentanyl pills and 10,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. The U.S. Coast Guard says it seized nearly 500,000 pounds of cocaine by the end of 2025. The Department of Homeland Security says that is enough to provide almost 180 million lethal doses.
Just days after a major winter storm blanketed the East Coast, another powerful system is forming. Winter Storm Gianna could bring heavy snow, strong winds, and coastal flooding across the southeast. NTD's Christina Corona tells us more.
New winter storm Gianna is expected to develop off the East Coast this weekend and could strengthen into a bomb cyclone. The National Weather Service says Gianna will bring heavy snow, strong winds, and coastal flooding from the Carolinas to New England. Over 20 million people are under winter storm watches, including residents of Charlotte, Raleigh, Norfolk, and Atlanta. Snow and strong winds are expected Friday night into Saturday in Georgia, the Carolinas, and southern Virginia. Blizzard conditions with gusts up to 60 miles per hour are possible in coastal southeast Virginia and northeast North Carolina, while central and eastern North Carolina and southern Virginia could see 6 to 12 inches of snow. Travel could become dangerous with power outages and road closures possible, and coastal flooding is a concern during high tide. Snow will start Friday into Saturday across the southeast, peak Sunday, and move away by Monday. Authorities urge residents to prepare by clearing gutters, stocking up on supplies, and protecting pipes and pets. The warning comes as states are still recovering from last week's storm, which has killed at least 80 people. Hundreds of National Guard troops in Mississippi and Tennessee have been mobilized to help residents stranded by icy conditions, while power outages still affect tens of thousands. Christina Corona, NTD News.
Up ahead, President Trump hosting his first cabinet meeting of 2026. He's issuing a harsh warning for Iran while announcing his next plans for Venezuela. That's coming up. Welcome back. President Trump hosting his first cabinet meeting of 2026. In his wide-ranging comments, he sent a warning to Iran and touted Operation Absolute Resolve in Venezuela. NTD's Washington correspondent Mariotsu brings us the details from the White House.
Our military is very, very strong. You may want to say something about the large fleet of ships that's heading over to the Middle East.
President Trump warning that the fleet headed toward Iran is larger than the one that was sent to Venezuela, urging Iran to make a nuclear deal.
We're having to rebuild how our enemies perceive us. And when President Trump said we're not getting a nuclear Iran, you won't have a nuclear bomb, he meant it.
This coming as President Trump has repeatedly threatened to intervene if Iran continues to kill anti-regime protesters. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth saying that rebuilding the perception of America means reestablishing deterrence and empowering the military. This as he touts Operation Absolute Resolve.
No other military in the world could have executed the most sophisticated, powerful raid, not just in American history, I would say in world history.
On the economic front, the Fed kept the rate steady Wednesday at its first meeting of 2026, a move the president continues to criticize. That's as the White House touts the largest tax refund season in U.S. history, which President Trump attributes to his tariff strategy.
We've been given great national security because of tariffs, and we've also been given unprecedented income because of tariffs. I hope we're going to be successful with the Supreme Court case because we're waiting. And, you know, the people that are fighting us on that case, by the way, are China-centric. These are people that are for China, but they're also outside of the United States.
Reporting from the White House, Mariotsu, NTD News.
The Trump administration took action on several fronts yesterday, touching on China, Cuba, Canada, and Venezuela. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the latest, including President Trump's warning to the UK over ties with Beijing.
Prime Minister.
President Trump is warning the United Kingdom against expanding business ties with China, calling the move very dangerous.
Well, it's very dangerous for them to do that, and it's even more dangerous, I think, for Canada to get into business with China. Canada is not doing well. They're doing very poorly, and you can't look at China as the answer.
Trump made the remarks as UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited Beijing. Cuba is also in focus under a new executive order from President Trump. It enables putting tariffs on goods from countries that sell or otherwise provide oil to Cuba. The order says the Cuban regime aligns itself with numerous hostile countries like China, Russia, and Iran, hosting their military and intelligence capabilities. It says Cuba provides safe haven for transnational terrorist groups such as Hezbollah and Hamas. It also says the regime persecutes and tortures political opponents, denies free speech and press, profits corruptly from the Cuban people's misery, and incites chaos by spreading communist ideology across the region. Turning to Canada, President Trump says he's decertifying the Canadian-made Bombardier Global Express and potentially all aircraft made in Canada. Trump says the move comes in response to Canada's refusal to certify several U.S.-made Gulfstream jet models. He added that unless Canada immediately certifies all Gulfstream aircraft, his administration will impose 50% tariffs on Canadian aircraft sold in the United States. In Venezuela, acting President Delcy Rodriguez signed into law a major reform of the country's oil legislation yesterday. The step followed a phone call from President Trump concerning the nation's commercial airspace.
We are talking about lifting restrictions on Venezuela's commercial airspace so that all airlines that need to come, and investors that need to come can come.
American citizens will be very shortly able to go to Venezuela, and they'll be safe there.
American Airlines confirmed plans to resume service to Venezuela for the first time in more than 6 years. Late yesterday, Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy rescinded a 2019 order blocking U.S. flights to the country after President Trump directed him to do so. In his directive, Duffy said the continued suspension of air service is no longer required by the public interest. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
As we've been covering, President Trump recently announced a framework for a deal with NATO on Greenland's future. The president said he would not use military force to obtain the territory, but he has expressed interest in a U.S. acquisition. What could be the future of Greenland as it relates to American interests? And what does history tell us about negotiations over large land masses? Here to unpack all of this is C. Evan Stewart. He's a visiting professor at Cornell University, plus an adjunct professor at Fordham Law School. Thanks for your time, Professor Stewart. Based on the stance of the Greenlandic politicians and the sentiment of the Danes, what could be the most likely outcome of any American negotiations surrounding Greenland?
Well, of course, we don't know what the future holds, but as a practical matter, in the aftermath of World War II, we've had functional military control of Greenland. So I think as a practical matter, from a geopolitical standpoint, I can foresee us having more, if you will, boots on the ground there and military operations. Certainly there's a reason to do this because China and Russia are exerting their influence there, and that's something that's not in our national interest.
Well, yes, absolutely. The concerns surround Russia's use of the missiles and also China's naval activity and infrastructure in the Arctic as part of the reasons. Now, many Americans, including lawmakers, were skeptical of the Alaska purchase at the time, but it proved to be an investment with lasting returns. Now, how does that compare to Trump's interests in Greenland?
Well, it's very similar. In fact, the same man who bought Alaska, William Henry Seward, at the same time was trying to buy Greenland. So they're on different sides of our country, but they have very important, not just mineral stakes there, but they also have geopolitical. So, for example, in World War II, Franklin Roosevelt moved essentially the American Navy beyond Greenland to protect our country. So these areas, Alaska, Seward also bought Midway, had designs on Hawaii, had a plan for the Panama Canal. These things are part of American history that didn't just suddenly pop up in the last 12 months. This is something that's really part of our history, literally for 175 years.
It is so fascinating. And Professor Stewart, as you may know, some of the senators who had to approve Seward's negotiations to purchase Alaska said that they stipulated that Seward would have to live in Alaska in order for it to work. So they were scoffing at him, but it ended up working out. Now, are there any realistic avenues for an American acquisition of Greenland?
I don't see that happening. I don't think that it would probably destroy our NATO alliance if we did that. So again, I don't think that's really in anyone's interest. I think from a military standpoint, geopolitical standpoint, just having more of a military presence there is probably sufficient to protect our national interest. I don't think we get anything beyond that, giving the people of Greenland a vote or making it a 51st state. I don't think that's really necessarily in our interest.
And Professor Stewart, geopolitical tensions, as we've been touching on with Russia and China, are intensifying. And Greenland is right at the intersection of North America, Europe, and the Arctic. And U.S. officials want to prevent those adversaries from gaining a foothold in the region. How important is this potentially strategic asset to America?
No doubt it's very, very important. And again, this has been, Seward saw this, as it's recently come out. President Truman tried to buy it for $100 million in gold at the end of World War II. Again, Franklin Roosevelt saw it as a critically important strategic point in the North Atlantic to get our ships and troops across the Atlantic to fight in World War II and to resupply the Soviet Union. So geopolitically, it's an incredibly important part of the world for us. And essentially, where I see us ending up is reestablishing the military presence that we sort of let crumble over the last, say, 40 years.
And are there any obstacles to reestablishing that military presence?
Really, no. I mean, to a large extent, Trump could basically declare victory on that front and just reestablish those military presence right now. There's nothing to stop that. And perhaps that's the end game here. You push out beyond where you actually want to end, and then you declare victory by getting, as Ronald Reagan once said, if you get 75% of what you want, that's victory. I think we already have 75%. So, but keeping China out, keeping Russia out, and protecting Greenland. And of course, as Greenland warms, of course, the name Greenland, it used to be green. It does have a very important natural resources that are important not just for the United States, but for the rest of the world.
Well, and to your point, President Putin of Russia estimates that the value of Greenland could be $200 to $250 billion.
No doubt about it. I mean, let's face it, what's under Greenland, just as no one knew what was under Russia, what was called Russia, Alaska. We found out what's under Alaska once we bought it. An enormously rich area in natural resources, which we're still finding things in Alaska. Similarly in Greenland, it's very, very important. It's been untouched literally forever. And so it's a real frontier, no doubt about it.
Yeah, and $7 million, that's how much the United States bought Alaska for. Again, that was back in Civil Era War dollars, but really fascinating discussion. Thank you, Professor C. Evan Stewart.
My pleasure. Nice speaking with you this morning.
Next, fake bomb and death threats, and now an email warning that UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer would be shot if Shen Yun performs in Britain. Authorities say these messages are part of the Chinese Communist Party's ongoing campaign to intimidate and silence the U.S.-based performing arts company. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley has more.
Shen Yun Performing Arts, a New York-based classical Chinese dance company, is facing a renewed wave of fake bomb and death threats, widely seen as intimidation tactics linked to Beijing's efforts to suppress the group. Importantly, no actual attacks have ever occurred, and no Shen Yun performance has ever been canceled because of these threats. The messages often sent to venues scheduled to host Shen Yun performances around the world follow a similar pattern. Authorities have consistently confirmed the threats are hoaxes, designed to frighten organizers and audiences rather than carry out real violence. There have been 0 incidents of harm, and every performance has gone as planned. Just last week, Shen Yun received an email written in Chinese stating, "If you insist on having Shen Yun perform, you will experience a surprise terrorist attack. I am not joking." Another message sent last month escalated the rhetoric, threatening that British Prime Minister Keir Starmer would be shot if Shen Yun performances were not cancelled. While extreme, these messages fit squarely into what experts describe as Beijing's broader campaign to sabotage and silence Shen Yun.
What's really at play goes way beyond the Falun Gong diaspora, the community, goes way beyond this one company, Shen Yun. This is a national security issue of, I would say, the gravest kind.
Founded in 2006 by practitioners of Falun Gong, also known as Falun Dafa, Shen Yun seeks to revive China's 5,000 years of traditional culture rooted in Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian values. That mission directly challenges the Chinese Communist Party's ideology, which has long sought to replace traditional belief systems with party loyalty. Since Shen Yun's founding, the CCP has used a wide range of tactics to interfere with the company's work. Chinese embassies and consulates have pressured officials and presenters abroad to block performances. Performers' family members in China have been harassed, detained, or imprisoned. In the United States, Shen Yun tour buses have been deliberately sabotaged, tires slashed in ways designed not to deflate immediately, but to fail dangerously at high speeds.
And this is an example from last year, but this actually started in 2010. If you look at this cut, it doesn't look like much. It's a circular cut. But if you actually open it up, you see it's several inches deep, and it's cut in such a way that the tire would not deflate immediately, but would explode at high speeds on a highway.
In November 2024, a Chinese national living in California was sentenced for attempting to bribe an IRS agent to revoke Shen Yun's tax-exempt status, another effort tied to Beijing's campaign. Leaked documents from China's Ministry of State Security also reveals a coordinated disinformation effort aimed at weaponizing social media and U.S. media outlets to discredit Shen Yun.
We have multiple sources, including a well-known professor in Australia, several other sources within the Ministry of Public Security that say this came from Xi Jinping himself, who acknowledged that all the efforts they've been undertaking over the last 25 years to silence Falun Gong and Shenyun have failed, and they needed to get very serious about eliminating Falun Gong globally. Their words, not mine.
Despite years of intimidation and harassment, Shenyun continues to expand, operating 8 touring companies worldwide and performing to sold-out audiences as it brings traditional Chinese culture to the global stage. Reporting by Jack Bradley, NTD News.
Still to come, President Trump is suing the IRS and the Treasury Department for up to $10 billion. The lawsuit argues they failed to prevent Trump's confidential tax returns from being leaked. Stay with us for more. Welcome back. Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, is due back in federal court today. The judge is considering whether prosecutors can seek the death penalty and whether key evidence seized during his arrest will be allowed at trial. Mangione has been charged in a 4-count federal indictment in the killing of United Healthcare CEO, but his attorneys are seeking to have those 2 charges dropped. The judge is expected to rule soon on whether to dismiss the murder charge involving the use of a firearm, which could carry the death penalty, as well as a separate firearms-related count. The judge is also expected to decide whether prosecutors can present key evidence to jurors, including a 9mm handgun and a notebook in which Mangione allegedly described plans to kill a health insurance executive. His case is expected to go to trial in September. This, as a man from Minnesota was arrested yesterday after allegedly impersonating an FBI agent in an attempted effort to free Mangione from the Brooklyn Detention Center. A search uncovered a barbecue-style fork and a circular steel blade in his backpack. Law enforcement says it is not clear whether or how Anderson may be connected to Mangione. President Trump is suing the IRS and the Treasury Department for at least $10 billion. He's accusing the agencies of an unauthorized leak of his tax returns during his first administration. The suit alleges the government failed to protect private tax information leaked to the press by Charles Littlejohn, a former IRS contractor. The suit alleges Littlejohn had staff-like access to confidential tax information. Littlejohn was sentenced to 5 years in prison in 2024 for disclosing the records of the president and thousands of other wealthy taxpayers. The new lawsuit says the leak included false reports of fraud in Trump's tax records and states this portrayed Trump in a false light. President Trump is filing the suit personally alongside his 2 eldest sons, not in his official capacity as president. The IRS and Treasury Department have not yet commented. The FBI this week searched the Fulton County, Georgia Elections Office. It's suspected to involve voting records from the 2020 election requested last year by the Justice Department. NTD's Arlene Richards has more details.
The FBI executed a search warrant Wednesday at a Fulton County Elections office near Atlanta. While the Bureau's Atlanta field office didn't provide details on the search, it comes about 6 weeks after the Justice Department sued the county over its failure to provide voting records from the 2020 election. FBI Director Kash Patel confirmed the search warrant on Thursday.
The FBI and DOJ presented this information to a judge in Georgia, where they determined, the judge, that there was a finding for probable cause following the constitutional precepts that are necessary to safeguard an investigation.
Fulton County Department of Registration and Elections is always and will continue to maintain fair, transparent, and accurate elections. And we will continue to do the work of the electorate here in Fulton County.
President Trump has long maintained that there were improprieties in tabulating Georgia's 2020 election results and requested a recount. Georgia's Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger said at that time that Fulton County had cut corners during the second recount. Counties in Georgia had a deadline to complete the recount, but Raffensperger said his office had tired of what he called Fulton County's dysfunction. On Wednesday, agents collected voting information from 2020, including boxes of ballots, voter rolls, and possibly tabulator tapes. The lawsuit claims that the custodian of records refused the Justice Department's request to turn over the records. Meanwhile, Patel says the search is part of their ongoing investigation.
They, as far as we know, were removing certain boxes from the election center here. We don't know what they were going to do with the boxes. We don't know where they're taking the boxes.
You saw trucks, you saw material being removed, and what the FBI will do is now analyze that information, and we will take the next investigatory steps with our Department of Justice partners.
It was a rigged election. Everybody now knows that. They found out. People will soon be prosecuted for what they did.
Patel said the search warrant would eventually be unsealed so that the American public can read it. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The White House hosted a roundtable yesterday on school choice. Under President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, taxpayers can receive an up to $1,700 annual credit for school choice. States have to opt in for it to be available. And joining me now is an attendee of the roundtable, Jonathan Butcher. He's the acting director of the Center for Education Policy at the Heritage Foundation. It's great to have you with us, Jonathan. Tell us about this tax credit and how it can be used and whether it will benefit children.
Well, this event came at just the right time. It was the end of National School Choice Week this week, and the Trump administration is celebrating really a remarkable period for school choice in the U.S. With the passage of education savings accounts in Texas. That means that more than half of all children in the U.S. have access to some form of private learning opportunity. This is very exciting for parents who are looking for quality options for their children, whether it's due to safety concerns at their school, whether it's due to looking for extra help for their children or special services for children with special needs. This is really an exciting time for parents all over the country.
Jonathan, I follow what you're saying, and even under the Biden administration, several red states allowed this push for access to school choice. And, Texas is one of them. You mentioned a few others. California and New York haven't actually joined in on this effort yet. Now, which states have yet to opt in, and why haven't they?
So more than half of all states in the U.S. already have some form of private school scholarship program. About half of states, 25 as of yesterday, have opted into the program that you described in the One Big Beautiful Bill. And I think what should be encouraging to lawmakers around the country is that the Trump administration has said they are very serious about making sure the rules and regulations around this new scholarship program will protect private schools and the parents who are participating. Because, of course, there could be the possibility that at some point regulators could try to strangle private schools and make it difficult for religious schools in particular to maintain their mission statements and be able to enroll students based on the way that they want children to be educated and the parents who have entrusted their children to them. So I think that we're in really a great position right now for state lawmakers to continue to expand private school options, such as they're considering in Mississippi, as well as other states that are looking to create new opportunities for students.
So, Jonathan, a White House official reportedly said that there are faith-based programs in private schooling, as well as these career-oriented paths. Open to comment on that, or you could give us a little more detail on what this strangling process looks like that you were alluding to.
Well, there are some private school choice programs that have made restrictions on the participating private schools. So Maryland, for example, several years ago, when they adopted a private school choice program, they tried to change the way that religious schools conducted their enrollment procedures. And that, of course, put restrictions on the parents who were trying to choose a school for their child based on their values. Fortunately, there are provisions that state lawmakers can use based off of the education savings accounts in Arizona, for example, that say specifically that lawmakers may not put restrictions or otherwise try to confine the mission statements or enrollment procedures of participating private schools. And this is great news. I mean, look, in Arizona, just over the past 10 days, we've heard news that now 100,000 children are using education savings accounts in the state of Arizona. In Florida, we're up to 500,000 children using some form of private school scholarship program. This is really a turning point in the school choice market for parents and children across the country.
Okay, now how will expanded school choice affect those inner city low-income students?
Well, fortunately, some of these private school choice programs actually originated to serve children in low-income areas. In fact, the very first private school scholarship program was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, for children from low-income homes. In Washington, D.C., until recently, the only federal school choice program was for children in low-income areas in Washington, D.C. So in many places, in fact, 17 states in the U.S., have programs that allow any child, regardless of their background, to apply for an education savings account within their state. And again, we're talking about places like West Virginia, as well as Louisiana and Texas and Florida. So it has now become the way that lawmakers look at school choice is to make it universal, to make it something that every child, regardless of their background, can participate. Research finds that these programs help children, especially those from low-income backgrounds.
So let's say there's a person who has a child enrolled in a public school. Explain the money dynamics when more people start choosing where they send their kids.
Well, this will have no impact on public school finances. When children leave a traditional school to pick a school of their choice, the money will go with that child. And so the school will not be paid for ghost students, students who are no longer there. And remember that most spending comes from state and local taxpayers. So anything that happens on the federal side, such as this new federal tax credit scholarship, we're only talking about a very small portion of the per student spending for most students. And research finds that increased spending on public schools does not improve student achievement. And in fact, these private school choice options improve not only student achievement, but also student attainment. It shows that they will be more likely to finish high school, and some research has found that they can attend and persist in college at higher rates if they participate in a private school scholarship program.
Very fascinating insight, Jonathan. We just have a few seconds here, a couple sentences. What work still needs to be done to ensure that all American children have access to the best education?
Well, I think we're looking at Mississippi in particular right now. There's a great opportunity there to expand an existing private school choice opportunity for families there. And so I think lawmakers should be looking at the success in places like Arizona, Florida, as well as the research showing that students can achieve more when they use a private school choice program. And that should encourage Mississippi lawmakers as they consider these proposals.
Jonathan Butcher, thanks for coming on our show and sharing us all that information.
Thank you.
NTD's 5th International Photography Competition came to a conclusion yesterday with the winners announced at its 3rd and final exhibition day in New York City. See all that in a moment. Hi again. President Trump spoke about First Lady Melania Trump's new documentary ahead of its global release today. The film, titled Melania, was produced by the First Lady and chronicles the 20 days leading up to her husband's return to the White House.
I want to show the audience my life, what it takes to be a First Lady again, and transition from private citizen back to the White House.
I saw it for the first time 2 nights ago. I loved it. I thought it was really great. But it really brings back a glamour that you just don't see anymore. And our country can use a little bit of that, right?
Melania Trump said at the premiere yesterday she is very proud of the film. She told reporters the schedule was very intense, saying the crew followed her from morning till evening. The film includes her planning for her husband's inauguration and managing her various businesses and charity work, as well as looking after her family as they moved back into the White House. One of NTD's exclusive arts and culture events, the 5th International Photography Competition, just announced the winners at its finalist exhibition in New York City. The competition has 2 major categories, humanity and nature. Its mission is promoting traditional values and aesthetics. NTD's Flora Hua was there last night. Here's that story.
What an exciting night. Winners and finalists of NTD's 5th International Photography Competition gathered here for the award ceremony. The Gold Award goes to Adrian Yu from Hong Kong. He hopes to share a message through his work, which is the world needs truthfulness, compassion, and forbearance.
I was excited. It was a big surprise. I really didn't expect that.
Adrian Yu said he will continue to sharpen his skills in photography. He also felt very inspired by others' works.
The NTD photography competition covers a very wide range of themes, including humanity, landscapes, and humanistic photography. The themes are extremely diverse, which really opened up a lot of space for my imagination.
Gina Pottinger was deeply touched by the kindness she received from the competition committee, as well as the values NTD preserved.
Every photographer that entered this contest is participating in God's work in the world by also creating and capturing through our photos what God created. So our fellow humans, the animals that He's created, the natural world, we are participating in that and celebrating it. And I think that gives God joy, and we have joy because that we're participating with God in that way.
Silver Award winner Minlun Cai came from southern Taiwan's Jiayi. He hoped to showcase the beauty of his hometown through the international platform created by the NTD photography competition. Cai's wife and daughter also came here to show support. Cai shared how he incorporated photography into family education.
I believe that with children, what matters most is spending time with them. I really value family life and being able to go outside with my kids, taking walks, enjoying nature, and letting them connect with the natural world. When we see beautiful things, we can record those moments together.
Finalist Bill Xie teaches photography in college and is also a wedding photographer.
The quality of this photography exhibition was incredibly high. I was amazed by so many of the photos.
A couple from New Jersey fell deeply in love with the exhibition.
It's wonderful. NTD did a great job of bringing us all together. Amateurs, professionals, photographers from all over the world. I'm just thrilled to be able to participate and to learn.
Larry Dai, the jury chair of the competition, explained the goal of this event.
Through this competition, we hope to guide photography back to its true purpose, so people can better understand what photography should express, what it should celebrate, and how to capture those beautiful, meaningful moments.
Reporting from New York City's Samagondi Club, Flora Hua, NTD News.
The famous Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show is starting up in early February and is marking its 150th year. A popular part of the show, the Masters Agility Championship, emphasizes canine movement over appearance. And Border Collies have captured 9 of the 12 titles since the agility course was introduced in 2014. 2025 champion trainer Emily Klarman says the dogs' sharp minds and agile bodies are what give them the edge.
The Border Collies are really good at agility based off of a few factors. First is they're very intelligent. So agility can be a bit complicated as far as the details that can go into it, how tight they need to turn, which obstacle they need to go to. The different venues can increase the challenge of the sequence in order. And it takes a rather smart dog to be able to do it. That is certainly not to say that any dog couldn't do it, but the Border Collies tend to pick up on it a bit easier. The way that they are built and structured lets them physically get through the course a little bit easier as well. So they're bred to be able to go out on long runs and pivots and that sort of thing. So them being able to bend over jumps and run over the dog walk is a little bit easier for them than maybe like a pug would be. So they're able to physically and mentally navigate through the course a little bit easier than some other dogs might be able to.
Klarman and her Border Collie Vanish won the top agility spot at Westminster last year. That dog is now pregnant, so neither Vanish nor Klarman will be competing in this year's competition. Klarman is currently training another Border Collie, Swish, at UDOG, a special training center in Philadelphia. If you have any feedback on the show or have something you'd like to see us cover, send us an email at goodmorning@ntd.com. For round-the-clock original news coverage, watch us live at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. I'm Kevin Hogan. Have a great weekend.